All right, hockey card fans. Been a while, but welcome back. Been to a bunch of different places to get some hockey cards, but we're gonna go with my favorite place, Heroes Cards and Comics. Working on the 1971 O-Pee-chee set, which is probably one of the most expensive ones out there because it has Dryden, Lafleur, and Dion as rookies. And we've been slowly chugging away, but we're getting close to that finish line. Got a huge haul here, and let's go see what we got. So this is the Portrait Series. This is also Montreal won the Cup that year in '71. They beat Chicago in the final. Ken Dryden came out of nowhere. But without further ado, let's start off with our first card. Been waiting to get this one. Boston Bruins center, Phil Esposito. I paid $10 for this card. You can see that he's wearing jeans. Him and Ken Hodge decided to wear jeans for the photo shoot. Esposito never took hockey cards seriously and thought of it as a gimmick, just something to do and get the hell out of there. Which is kind of too bad. Esposito, Hall of Fame guy, 2 Stanley Cups with Boston. Went to another 2 Stanley Cups, one with Boston where he lost to the Flyers, and another Stanley Cup where he lost with the New York Rangers to Montreal Canadiens. 8-time All-Star, 5-time Art Ross, 2-time Hart, 2-time Pearson on the 100th anniversary team. He had 7 straight 40-plus goal seasons, including 5 straight 50-goal seasons. And he set records with 76 goals before Gretzky broke that with 92. So he had 76, 66, 55, 68, and 61 all in 5 years. So the first guy to score 50 or more goals in 5 straight seasons. Had the record of 152 points before Gretzky smashed that with 164. And then later with 215. So Phil Esposito, 1,282 games at 717 goals, 873 assists for 1,590 points, plus minus a 252. That's a great goal scorer. Playoffs, pretty good playoff performer too. 130 playoff games, 61 goals, 76 assists for 137 points, and a plus minus a 25. Can't beat that. Hard to get. Not many players can beat that today. And they played fewer games back then in the playoffs, remember. It's funny how he started his career with the Chicago Blackhawks, but then got traded. So he was traded on May 15th, 67 from Chicago with Ken Hodge and Fred Stanfield to Boston for Giles Marat, Hubert Pitt Martin, and Jack Norris. Marat would later play for the LA Kings. Pitt Martin wasn't a bad player. Jack Norris was old. But Ken Hodge and Fred Stanfield and Esposito, they helped put Boston over the hump and win a Stanley Cup. So 1975, November 7th, trade from Boston Bruins with Carol Vadnais to New York Rangers for Brad Park, Gene Rattel, and Joe Zanuzzi. Toss-up. Brad Park was an excellent defenseman. Gene Rattel was an excellent forward. So was Carol Vadnais, though, and so was Esposito. Rattel, I had to give the nod to Boston for that one because of Brad Park. Slightly better than Rodney. Next we're going with the LA Kings right winger, Bill Flett. Now the Esposito card's in decent shape. It's got a little mark on the corner, but other than that, it's in good shape. The back is in pretty good shape too. Bill Flett card is in good shape as well. Bill Flett, right winger for the LA Kings. He was actually traded to the Philadelphia Flyers, won a Stanley Cup. Then went to the Toronto Maple Leafs, Atlanta Flames, jumps to the WHA, plays 3 years there, and then comes back to the NHL for 20 games. So he plays with Wayne Gretzky. In '72, he was traded from LA in January 28, '72, so that the year this card came out, because this is a 71-72 O-Pee-chee year. He was traded from LA with John Potvin, Ross Lonsberry, and Eddie Yoel to Philadelphia for Jim Johnson, Bill Lussick, Larry Brown, and Serge Bernier. Philly won that deal because Lonsberry and Flett were part of that team. Now we're going with defenseman, Buffalo Sabres, Al Hamilton. Another nice card. Gotta like that one. No marks at the back. He played for the New York Rangers, then the Buffalo Sabres, before jumping to the WHA, and he played the Alberta Oilers and the Edmonton Oilers. And then in 79-80, he came back to the NHL, played 31 games. Didn't do bad. So he played with Wayne Gretzky. I've had his card before when he played for the Rangers, so I'm not going to go over his stats. Philadelphia Flyers center, Jim Johnson. He is part of the Bill Flett trade. I just mentioned his name. He got traded with Bill. He went from the Flyers to the Kings the year, the 72, for Bill Flett. He'd started his career with the New York Rangers, then went to the Flyers as part of the expansion draft. Finished out the 72 season with LA, then went to the Minnesota Fighting Saints, and then finally the Indianapolis Racers. So in 302 NHL games, he had 75 goals, 111 assists for 186 points. Not bad. A point every other game. WHA, 157 games, 32 goals, 103 points. Only played 7 playoff games in the NHL with 2 assists. So didn't win anything in either league. Now we have left winger, Vancouver Canucks, Wayne Mackey. Chico Mackey's brother. And he even says that in his comic. Wayne often played in the shadow of his older brother, Chico. Chico Mackey played for the Chicago Blackhawks. And Wayne Mackey actually started with the Blackhawks before going to the St. Louis Blues, then with the Vancouver Canucks. Only played 246 games, 57 goals for 136 assists, and 2 playoff games with 1 goal. So he's claimed an interleague draft by St. Louis in 1969 from Chicago, then claimed an expansion draft by Vancouver from St. Louis. So it wasn't exactly, he had 2 good years in Vancouver, and then now we got Toronto Maple Leafs defenseman, Jim Dory. These cards are all in good shape. I tried to pick the best ones I could. The Esposito was in the display case. Jim Dory had been drafted by the Toronto Maple Leafs in the 4th round, 23rd overall in the 1964 draft. Only played 3 years with the Leafs, got traded this very year to the Rangers, played 1 game with the Rangers. Then jumped to the WHA, won an Avco trophy with the New England Whalers, and another one with the Quebec Nordiques. Played over 431 WHA games, 52 goals for 284 assists, or points. Pretty good. 51 playoff games, 5 goals, 33 assists for 38 points. In 232 NHL games, he had 25 goals for 99 points. Only 2 points in 11 playoff games, though. What did the Rangers get for him? Traded from the Toronto Maple Leafs to the New York Rangers for Pierre Giry on February 20th, 1972. Because he only played 1 game, I think the Leafs won that deal. But he had a pretty good W career, so I wondered if he won anything there. Nope, just a 2-time champion. Thought maybe he got an all-star. Buffalo Sabres center, Gilbert Perron. Paid $15 for this one. Surprised that the Esposito has a little bit of dings in it. This one also has soft corners. But Perron, this was his 2nd-year card in the Hall of Fame. He won the 1970-71 Calder Trophy. Won a 72-73 Lady Byng Trophy. 2-time All-Star and on the 100th anniversary team. He was the first he played his entire career in Buffalo. First Buffalo Sabre to score over 500 goals. 1,191 NHL games. He had 512 goals, 814 assists for 1,326 points, and he was a plus-minus 41. Got to remember he started his career on an expansion team, so his plus-minus wasn't great. Famous center of the French Connection with Rien Robert and Rick Martin. Never scored 50 goals in a season, unfortunately. Did have a couple of deep playoff runs, though. They went to the Stanley Cup final in 74-75 when they beat Montreal in the semifinal and then beat the Flyers, or they lost to the Flyers in 6 games. He wasn't bad, 6 goals, 9 assists for 15 points. 79-80 was probably his best Stanley Cup year, where they got to the semifinals but lost the Islanders. He had In 14 games, he had 10 goals, 11 assists for 21 points. But not bad. 90 NHL playoff games, 33 goals, 70 assists for 103 points, but was a minus 21. Going back to Philadelphia, we got defenseman Wayne Hillman. He actually won a Stanley Cup, or got a ring anyway, with the Chicago Blackhawks back in 1960, where he appeared in one playoff game, no points. No regular season games. But then he stayed with Chicago for another 4 years before going to the Rangers, then going to the Minnesota North Stars, Philadelphia Flyers, and finally ending his career with the Cleveland Crusaders. So he didn't win any Stanley Cups. Biggest thing that happened to him, he was traded on February 4th, 1965 from Chicago with John Brenneman and Doug Robinson to New York Rangers for Camille Henry, Doug Johnson, Billy Taylor, and future considerations. Not sure who won that trade. Probably Hillman, because he lasted longer than any of these other guys. But only played 691 AHL games, 104 points, 3 points in 28 playoff games. Played 126 WHA games, only 19 points. 10 playoff games, 2 points. So not exactly a household
St.
name.
Louis Blues defenseman Barclay Plager. One of 3 Plager brothers who all played in St. Louis.
He was 4 times played in the All-Star game. 614 NHL games. Had 231 points, and he had over 1,100 penalty minutes. Did appear in 3 Stanley Cup finals, but they lost all 3. So he's a big part of the St. Louis Blues as a rookie. Came right in. Played 68 NHL playoff games with 3 goals, 20 assists for 23 points. A minus 10, considering this is St. Louis we're talking about. 182 penalty minutes. So he's a guy who would drop the gloves. Wasn't a big guy. He's only 5'11", 175 pounds soaking wet. Now we're going to Chicago, the Windy City, for defenseman Keith Magnuson. These cards are generally in pretty good shape. This one's got more watermarks on it than anything else, than the others. But overall, it's not in bad shape as cards go. Played in 2 All-Star games. Appeared in 2 Stanley Cup finals where they lost both to Montreal. And in 589 games at 139 points. 68 playoff games at 12 points. Not a bad defenseman, but not a great defenseman. So we'll go to the Montreal Canadiens. And we're looking at center left winger Jacques Lemaire. This card's in terrible shape. I actually got it for free. It was the only one that they had Heroes for this year for Lemaire, and he threw it in for free because it's such bad shape. Too many creases in it. I picked it up just to help complete the set, and eventually one day I'll get a better copy. He is a Hall of Famer. He's an 8-time Stanley Cup winner, and he's on the 100th anniversary team. I think he retired before his time. He should have played a couple more years in Montreal. But he played 853 games, 366 goals, 469 assists for 835 points, plus minus of 344. He had only one season where his plus minus was a -1, and that was 1970-71. So the year they won the Cup. Statistically, his best season, 72-73, 44 goals, 51 assists for 95 points. He was an All-Star that year. Like I said, in his last season in the NHL, 78-79, he played 50 games, 24 goals, 31 assists for 55 points. Like, he could have kept playing. In 145 playoff games, 61 goals, 78 assists for 139 points and a plus minus of 54. Playoff performer. At 78-79, that last Stanley Cup he won in 78-79 before retiring. 16 games, he had 11 goals, 12 assists for 23 points. Tied for the lead with Guy Lafleur. He had the most goals, but Lafleur had more assists, so they tied for points. Bob Gainey won the Conn Smythe that season. Consistent guy.